Hey guys, welcome. This is Brad Krantz. Welcome to my Monday morning leadership here. Hey, I am starting a new leadership series on leadership questions, important questions that every leader should ask. And I was first introduced to this question by a good friend and leadership expert, Bob Tiede, in his book, Now That's a Great Question. I highly commend this book to you. It's something we don't hear maybe talk about too much, but leaders ask questions. Now that's a great question. And I'm also taking some of my texts and questions that have been framed by the author here, Chris Clark Epstein, and her book, Important Questions Every Leader Should Ask and Answer. Because again, this whole topic of leaders asking questions, I think is a great topic. One, it's something that's probably lacking without doubt, but part of being a leader is asking the right questions, but asking good questions as well. And just to frame our topic here, I'm going to do a quick screen share here with you because I thought this quote by Douglas MacArthur was great. He says, a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but he becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. And I think that kind of frames a little bit about what I'm talking here, maybe a little bit off center, but that's where we're at. So today's title is So Answers You Want Answers. So it's kind of an introduction to the 8-part series I'm going to be doing. And I think we all know that the goal of asking questions is to get answers. Right? Leaders ask questions to gather information, to understand motives and uncover problems, and then from these, quote, problems to work toward a hopeful solution. And I'm a big believer in being part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I hope you are too. I think we know that asking a question doesn't guarantee an answer, right? Life doesn't happen like it does in a TV courtroom drama. It kind of reminds me of the old 50s and 60s series Perry Mason that I used to watch on TV as a kid with my sister. There's not a solution to every situation. The case doesn't come to a conclusion at the end of 60 minutes. In the real world, right, there's no judge to compel an answer. So getting good answers to questions is left to the skill of the questioner, and I'll say leader, and it's a skill sometimes called soft skills. So I want to define this real quick. That is, soft skills is a personal attribute that enables someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. So in her book, Clark Epstein suggests 5 behaviors that you need to master to increase the quality and quantity of the answers you receive. And I think it's a pretty good list here. So number 1 is ask one question at a time. If you're inexperienced, you may kind of fall into the trap of asking multiple questions. You sit down and say, what about this? Or what about that? And why is this happening, et cetera. You just get bombarded with questions. I think we've had that happen in work situations by, I'll say, managers, bosses, et cetera. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Let's go back to the first question. Let me answer that first instead of having a slew of questions thrown at you, right? It's kind of a common problem. And I think this tends to happen because, if you're the questioner, you haven't really thought about the question you really want to ask, and you're not experienced with doing it. And I think that's a really good point. If you bombard someone, it's usually because you've opened your mouth before you engage your brain. And this is a common problem in work situations. I'm going to point the finger at bosses and managers because they're usually not taught on this. And if they don't have the soft skill of people skills, they just start blurting stuff up, and you feel like somebody's throwing darts at you. And you go, wait a minute, let me get one first. So it happens. Okay, excuse me. But by being aware of and practicing and asking one question, you can learn how to avoid this. Okay, and there's one more big pointer, and I think this needs to be said. Don't ask a question if you're not truly prepared for the answer you might get. I think a lot of people, they get surprised, or I can't believe they asked that, and you didn't take time to think, hey, if I'm asked, especially it's a pointed question, maybe it's a loaded question, maybe it's a political, or there's some there's something there. You just stepped in a minefield and you weren't prepared for the answer. So I always tell people, you're asking me money, for instance, and I say, no, don't be offended if I do that. You need to be prepared for the answers you might get. So I think that goes along with that. Number two, you want to pause at the end of a question. This is really an interesting one. Okay. You want to make it long enough for the answer to think, to formulate, and deliver their answer. Silence is often overlooked here as a leadership tool, and I think it really is. It can be powerful. Learning to keep your mouth shut is essential. And having been in professional sales for 30 some years, I can attest to that. Successful salespeople have long known, and I used to practice this, the value of silence for years. And that is the first person who speaks after the question is asked loses. And this is generally in a situation of trying to close a deal. If you ask, hey, are you ready to sign? Are you good to go? You shut up and don't say anything. You put it on them. It's not a manipulation tactic, but it is a skill that just, you've asked the question, wait to get the answer. It's counterintuitive, but that's why I believe it's called a learned skill. In the context of leaders asking questions, losing means that the leader doesn't get the real answer. If you just kind of keep going and talk over, somebody really wants to say it. Again, that's where you've got to really be able to listen. We're going to get to this coming up. Staying silent after asking a question involves more than just not talking. It means keeping eye contact, super important, staying still and feeling comfortable while you wait. This desirable behavior takes practice. You don't learn it overnight. You learn it by doing it. And most people believe that they pause a sufficient length of time after they ask a question. That's really interesting, but observation belies that, right? A 2 to 3 second pause are long if you're the one asking the question. That's 1001, 1002, 1003. But rather short if you're mentally trying to prepare an answer. That's not a lot of time. So I'm gonna do a example right here. So your goal is to work your way up to at least a 10-second pause after a question and watch the quality of the answers that you receive improve greatly. So let me give you an example here now. How long are you going to wait after asking a question? 10 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010. There you go. Okay. Silence or waiting can be priceless. Number three, learn about listening. This is a really critical one. This is close to my heart. If we're honest, I think most of us haven't really ever been taught to listen or been given feedback on our listening skills. We already, heard probably from mom or dad, you're not listening to me, okay? But we haven't really been taught specifically how to listen. I didn't learn it in high school. I didn't learn it in college. And we haven't really been given feedback on our listening skills. Not too much. Usually it's critical. And I dislike the term, constructive criticism, because it's neither. It's neither constructive. Criticism isn't constructive. Feedback is constructive. And we haven't really spent time thinking about how important good listening is. Okay. Think about that for a little bit. Okay. But to backtrack real quick, I'm going to jump on something I've talked about before. The skill of listening, it's one of the 10 characteristics of a servant leader. In fact, it's usually listed first. Number one. I wonder why. In order to be a good servant leader, you have to know how to listen. Empathy goes with that. And I've said this, I'll say it again. If you don't listen, you can't have empathy because you don't know what the other person's thinking or feeling. So you have to listen first in order to understand what they're saying, but in order to actually engage with and have empathy for somebody else. And here I'm going to say leaders differ from managers and bosses. The true leaders, servant leaders I'm talking about, it's that they don't give orders and work as employees. Listen, like in a work situation, your boss tells you get something done, or I need this by such and such a time. You just do it. Servant leadership really is the art of first listening to concerns and suggestions, and then they allow people to be involved. It might be everyone, it might be a few people, but they ask questions, which is what we're talking about here, right? The servant leader then takes time to reflect on everything that they've heard. And this way they include, I'll say everyone or as many people as they can, and it helps people feel that their input matters. So it starts with listening first. And that's one thing in work situations. I know I've been there, done that, where I've never had the leadership or the boss or the owner manager really ask me what I thought, and it was kind of frustrating. So I thought, I've got good input. I could give you some insight on this, but asking questions is an art and it's a skill. So it starts with listening first. Then number 4, asking follow-up questions. Okay, this sets the tone and distinguishes a good leader from an average one. You know, as Bob Tiede lays out succinctly in his book, Now That's a Great Question, he recommends, number 1, ask, what do you think? And number 2, what else? And then number 3, what else? And number 4, what else? That sounds really simple, I know, or maybe oversimplistic. You know, the one drawback here, obviously, is you need to be aware of this, that it's, you know, it's being a learned skills that, you know, too many in a row might start to feel like it's a interrogation. You have to say this with heart that you really want to know. And it's really here where you can encourage clarification of the points you've made in an answer by using verbal encouragers, such as, I'm going to give you some examples here. Can you please tell me more? Or please tell me more about that. Or what else can you add? And then, or please keep talking. You notice the uptick in my voice. So it's not a question. I'm asking a question, but I'm saying it in such a mode that I'm encouraging them to go on with what they're saying. So I hope you get the idea here. Okay. Number 5, lastly, is say thank you. You know, you guessed it. Your mother was right. Writing that thank you note was important to the giver of the gift. It really was. No matter how often they said that, you know, thanks isn't necessary, or you don't need to thank me, it was. And I'll tell you why. This is something I did regularly in my last job. I sent thank you notes as a follow-up after a job was completed to most all of my customers. I saw it as being really important, even though very few, if any, of my colleagues did. And it's a shame. And I said most because we get so busy where sometimes, hey, you're going to miss one or two people or a few people here. But as a general practice, I sent follow-up, handwritten follow-up thank you notes. I had several people over the years comment on, they appreciated it, one, but they said nobody takes time to do that anymore. And they don't. It's almost a lost art. And again, I'll just say that's a shame, okay? Because we can change things, do things that people don't expect. Go the extra mile. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Go that extra mile to really thank someone, even though maybe you don't really need to, but let them know you appreciated their time. Or in this context, you know, saying thank you to someone who spent time helping you by answering your questions. You know, it's going to increase the likelihood that you'll get more and deeper answers the next time you ask. Thank you goes a long way. It really does. And this thank you behavior also, this will enhance your reputation as a leader, believe it or not. So consistently practicing these 5 behaviors that I've just talked about will help turn you into an effective questioner and a leader, and one who gets answers, right? That's what we're after. You ask questions to get answers. So thanks so much for following me and joining me today, guys. Next week, I'll be addressing the power and problem of why. I'm going to be talking a little bit about sharing some stuff from Simon Sinek's book on that. You know, I hope that you receive value in this segment. Please keep tuned for more questions that every leader should ask, and hit the subscribe button if you got value out of this content. You'd like to be notified of more to come. And also, please reach out and feel free to connect with me on social media on the links that I'll provide. Have an awesome Monday, guys, and we'll be in touch with you. Bye-bye.